Tuesday, March 18th, 1 o'clock. And join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And we're not doing roll call. I guess we don't need to. There's two of us sitting here.
We're here.
There we are. Hi. All right, so item number 1, public comment. Comments limited.
Who is this person? Haven't seen you in a while.
All right, so public comment, comments limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone online that wants to have a comment on anything not on the agenda? All right, moving forward, approval of the minutes for the meeting of February 18th, 2025. You weren't here, but I reviewed them and they look fine. Can we still approve them since he wasn't here? Okay. Approved for us?
Well, if you say so.
Thank you. All right, item number 3, new business, report on the monthly financial reports for February 2025 pre-audit. And we have Jeffrey with us today. All yours, Jeffrey.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one change to the report that I wanted to point out. And this is actually, it's on page 3 of the report under non-operating fund revenue.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that is different this year is if you look at the very top under sales and charges, remember, this is non-operating. This isn't the regular rate revenue or anything along those lines. It's non-op. So in the past, under the old rate structure, we had capital R&R, water and sewer, as part of the rates. And then the money would get directly deposited into those two funds. That was by ordinance going back to 2013. The last rate study did away with the capital R&R component of the rates. It put it all under general revenues in the water and sewer operating funds. And now we transfer on a monthly basis the amount of money from those funds into the R&R funds. Your board passed a resolution back in October, I believe, of 2023, somewhere in there, right around the rate study, October, November, that set a minimum funding level for the R&R program. What we did is we went back and looked at the historical average of what was coming out of the rates, and then we converted that into a singular number, and that's what we used. 1.3 million is coming out of a minimum amount for the into the sewer, and 3.2 or is it 3.4 million for water? I get 3.4 million. We've augmented the sewer by a little bit, but anyway, those monies do not go directly into revenues. They're actually a transfer in now. The money is still going to R&R funds, but they're not recorded as revenues. The revenues still reside in the operating funds, water and sewer. So when you look at the top 2 lines on that page where you see blanks under 2025, that is why there's no more, because you can see the funds before that, how it worked out, because if you look in 24, we moved those monies over, the 1.3 and the 3.4. But prior to that, we actually had actual dollar amounts going into that fund.
You know, while we're talking about the board said we had put that roughly $4.7 million into those funds, and that was the minimum. At what point do we discuss if we increase that? Like during the budget, are we going to ask that question to the regular board members? Are we going to put more into R&R? How are we going to get to that point? I know we have the minimum, but where does that discussion start?
It starts in the budget process.
And will we talk about it this budget season?
Yes, we will, because that is linked with the CIP as well. Because I look at the funding needs. Going into a CIP program, we have R&R revenues, expansion fund revenues, grants, and so forth. So when we go through the CIP funding process, we'll look at all the different funding sources And that's what's determined what we need as far as minimum.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, what's rattling around in my head is that at some point I heard the phrase that we cannot use R&R funds to fund CIP. I mean, aren't they supposed to be separate? I mean, the R&R is removal and replacement. What CIP is new projects or what?
No, CIP is existing,
All
renovating existing projects and new projects for
Okay.
expansion. So yes, we've been using these funds for capital improvement program projects since the inception.
Okay, all right. I guess it must have been in my old district.
Isn't it something like it could be one construction in progress or capital improvement projects?
Mhm.
And then R&R was a certain separate for just replacement and repair or something?
It's renovation and replacement.
Renovation and
Yeah.
replacement, yeah.
But that designation, R&R, I can't remember the specific year, but it was like 2013.
Yes, sir.
That's when that nomenclature was originated. Before that, there was no opportunity to bump up. I don't know what they did. I wasn't on the board then, but did they bump up rates and call it, justify it by saying this, we have to designate this as R&R?
That is correct.
Okay.
Prior to 2013, there was no dedicated funding source for capital programs, capital projects. So as we went through that 2013 rate process, we identified a significant number of projects that we did not complete. Remember, we were also just coming out of the recession, and that retarded or held back a lot of our projects. So at that point, by ordinance, the board voted for an increase. All the increases on both the water and sewer side went to this R&R fund. There were no additional funds for the operating fund. So that's why by ordinance, they were made into a portion of the rates, and that's why they were going directly from the customer bills. When we do billing, it would go straight into the R&R funds, bypassing the operating funds completely.
When we did the change that the board approved to just not say R&R CIP, does it have some language that I don't recall that says it just is now considered one
Yeah, it did.
CIP, even though it's still R&R?
Well,
Portions of it can be.
the rate study identified capital funding needs within it. So within that rate study, they assumed a portion of those overall rates were going to fund capital.
Okay.
We took it a step further at the direction of Director Radaman to carve out those language and put it into policy and set those minimum levels.
Okay.
And that's where I came back to your board, I think it was in October of 23, to change our policies. Now, it's not as strong as an ordinance, because you can always go back and change policy. Ordinance requires a 4/5 vote. So what this had done, the unintended consequences, be careful what you wish for. The auditors looked at that and said, those are no longer restricted funds. So we could no longer identify those as restricted funds. So we had to go through a lot of work on my part and Kylie's part and Michael's part to go through and look at these and say, okay, here's our revenue in 2023. What portion of it is R&R under the old format? What portion is new money under the new format? And how were those funds allocated to projects? So we had to go through the entire year and identify those that are restricted and unrestricted, because that's had to show up on the balance sheet in the financial statements, because there's two separate line items when you look at the balance sheet, restricted and unrestricted funds.
And so at that minimum, that's restricted.
No, it is not restricted by ordinance, and it is not.
But is it considered restricted funds on our books?
No, it is not.
So that $4 million, whatever, that we say is for capital improvement, R&R, whatever we're calling it, those aren't considered restricted?
We're
Sorry.
gonna do some wordsmithing here.
Okay.
In my mind, you put those in those funds for R&R. So for general purposes, they are restricted for that. In an accounting
Saying
world,
they're not.
they are not restricted.
But does that mean like if all of us board members and you're not here, somebody else comes in and they could say, no, we don't want to do that anymore, just like that, and spend the money on administration.
You'd have to overturn, you'd have to change the policy.
Okay. Okay, so there's a little bit of protection, still can be done, just like
Yeah,
an ordinance could be,
Right.
just a little easier.
Yeah, it's much easier to do it by, change it by policy than ordinance, because ordinance is a 4/5 vote, the way it was
Right.
set up for that.
But I could see the importance of keeping it as an
Yeah.
ordinance because it protects people from spending on the things that it wasn't intended to be spent on, but here we are.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Now that was, I was hoping that'd be a short conversation, but
Yeah.
actually, I think it was very informative from both, from my point of view, and
yeah.
hopefully it was informative for you as well.
Yep.
Okay,
Well, we had talked about this for a while, about you guys separating that. So,
yeah.
Russ?
I just think it might be worthwhile that this paragraph at the bottom of the page, I don't know, that ought to,
Some of that.
that sums it up, but it ought to be on future agendas where there's no longer any, well, after 2025, you won't even have this
Right.
this account 414010.
Yeah,
That's going to disappear.
yes, sir. Well, it'll always be there, but it will disappear on the reports as it filters out.
You gotta wait till after you get rid of 23 and 24.
Yeah.
It won't be used anymore at this point.
And the
Okay.
reason why in 24 you still see it, because that was the year we had a combination of rates and transfers.
Gotcha.
Well, Mike, just consider what I'm saying is that theoretically, the board member should understand that, but if some member of the community in Valley Springs is looking over the stuff, that it might be helpful if that paragraph is included in the report.
Certainly. And that will be, as you bring that up, that's a great discussion point as we go through the budget process.
Okay. So that was a pretty short meeting.
Yeah. Regarding the expense side, you want just, Russ, you want to go through and kind of look this over right now and make some comments, or go directly to the explanations of why some are higher or lower than others?
And just for edification purposes, really, when we're looking at the explanations, if it's within 3 to 5%, I say that's within spitting distance. But the other component of this is you may be out 10%, but 10% on a $2,000 line item to me is immaterial.
That's
It's more along the lines of why are you out on the large dollar items? And we have a few of those.
You know, I have a question, I could be totally wrong, but on the, where the benchmark, shouldn't the benchmark be like, what is it, 67 or something like that, not 72%? The benchmark, percentage of budget?
You do the 5%.
Oh,
Oh, no, she's talking about you talking about.
yeah, right up
benchmark?
here where the benchmark number is, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, I
think it's a different thing. I'm sorry, let me get out my
I think
calculator.
67 change or 68.
It's 67.
And then you add 5%. I say, why do that?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, because that's not the real target, I don't think. I mean, the real target should be what it
Yeah,
is
you're
if you're
right. I see
dividing
what she's saying. 8 months
is,
is 66.7%.
yeah,
Oh.
8 months into the year.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we've ever changed it. This is the first time I've seen it this way. And I'm just, it's probably not a big deal, but I know I'm looking for the benchmark. I think it would be,
You want it
Really?
exactly 66.67?
well, I think 68
Yeah.
would be okay, or 68.
68%.
Okay,
You know,
sure, I'm-
round up or
It's-
whatever.
Okay.
The
that's
one,
fine.
not
It's never been
5%.
done that way, so it's just.
Really?
threw me.
I've
Yeah,
never
that's
seen it
started
before.
here. So, yeah, we can change that.
Yeah.
It's your guys' call.
So do you want to take away the 5%
Yeah.
disclaimer?
Yeah, do that, take away the 5% disclaimer, but
I mean, it's at your benefit at this point half the time.
What I would look at.
Hey, you guys talk about it. It's not that big of a
Understood.
deal.
But
Yeah.
what I think what you're saying and what I consider too, from some of my historical background,
Mhm.
is when you're looking at 8 months out of the fiscal year,
Right.
it's 67 point or thereabout percent. 66 points, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
that. And so we round it up to 67. And then we can still use the 5% when we're looking at individual count numbers. If it's less than 5% over the 67, then we can go from there. But I know what you're saying now as I look at this and looking what Catherine did.
But so what do you do when you get to the last month of the year?
We don't have a report.
It's just here that is. Because otherwise you'd be like 105 or something like that.
And
So
you
it'd be
know-
100. See,
See,
it's not that big of a deal. I just,
Yeah.
because I did these reports for so many years, I always look at that.
and
But I'm surprised I never brought it up, but
honestly, it caught my eye this last go around, but I didn't, it just.
I didn't
skipped
catch
over
many
it.
other
But if you look on page 1
of the
of
report.
the report under operating revenues, water and sewer,
Uh-huh.
we are at 66.44% of budget.
Yeah.
And if we have that at 67%, we're tracking.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's actually the report's favor to see that we're
Yeah.
more on target than 72,
So
but
I was having
No
less
worries.
concern because we were having some issues with that earlier. And
Yeah.
people found out some of the changes that we had recording revenues and R and so forth. So
Yeah.
I feel better now.
very good. I wasn't the only one that picked it. All right.
You can see this
Rich,
is
you got
rather
the check.
casual, Director Thomas.
Yeah. Well, it usually is.
Yeah. The one thing just kind of popped off the page here, under the account type 60260, the refuse and disposal. Does that figure include the like the biohazard stuff that we take out of the settling ponds?
For Gambia and all the others, yes.
Do we have to haul that to Kettleman City or something, or I'm
I
just,
thought it was Portreo Hills is the name of the place, but I think there's some in Contra Costa County that we ship it to.
okay. I just wonder why we budgeted it when it was almost 24,000 and 24 that we budgeted 22,000. I thought that with trucking and everything going up that it would have been higher, but
Well,
Whatever,
some of the
whatever.
times when we make our budgets, we start in March. So we don't have all the full numbers.
okay.
And we do our best, but this is an opportunity for us to go back and look at the budget versus actual as we prepare next year's budget.
Do you have a note on that particular line item?
Yes. Oh, in detail, I don't think I do because I'm
Okay.
not,
It's almost insignificant figures, but the fact that it
But-
went down surprises me as a target. Okay.
yes, we do have it there. Yes, the note is in page 9, Director Cicada.
Okay.
There's still, what is folded into outside services? There couldn't be any, there's no legal services in that.
No, outside services is different.
Yeah,
It's probably a little easier to see that when you go to the individual departments versus roll up, because each one is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So if we go to. Let's,
Page 8 for department.
page 8. Thank you, Mike. Outside services under non-departmental, we have spraying, weed control, pest control, claims and damages, those type of things that fall under that overall outside services, Y4.
But on the same page that I'm looking at, page 5, you have outside services, and then two lines down from there, there's spraying and weeds and insects as a separate.
Okay, I was looking at the roll-up on the following page.
Okay.
Where we do it. Outside services could be document destruction.
Mhm.
When we bring people in on a monthly or semi-monthly basis to get our documents destroyed, things along those lines.
We must have a lot of documents to destroy if we're
Well-
budgeting 135,000 to do it. So
Where are you on? What number
5.
is that one up top?
up top, yeah.
I can get it more detail, but I think it's more along the lines of services that vendors provide to us.
On page 5, yeah. Oh, the total. Yeah, but that's the total of, oh, no, it isn't. That is just one.
Can you please bring in a bunch of part?
But see how it says this right here and then goes to that one?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go.
We're
to the
bringing up the budget
department.
document so I can get you more detail on each one.
Yeah. So number 604 is 6,400.
Hmm.
I think the bigger ones would be under non-departmental ops and finance. No, for for outside services.
6,400 is the account number 60400. I don't see any of it. Everything down. Hmm. 60400. So we've got
For department
61,000 for
non-departmental.
non-departmental.
It includes motherload answering services,
Oh, okay.
signal service for our alarm service, Iron Mountain for document destruction, landscaping services, road maintenance here to the Reed Group. And in
Operating.
yeah, I'm pulling that, I'm looking into operations now.
Are you looking at your green sheets?
Yeah,
Okay, we get those pretty soon, right?
no, we're doing away with them.
No, you have not.
They're now
I
going
didn't
to
bring
bring
them.
pink sheets.
Pink is fine.
Outside services for utilities, vehicle cloud service, alarm service, pagers. Road access fees, things like that. So
Okay.
does that give you enough of a
Mhm.
feel for what's there?
Yeah.
Since I mentioned the green sheets, we'll have those as, you can give me those prior to the meeting when we go line by line for the most part on the budget, right?
We will go over that, yes.
Okay, no, I'll get copies.
We will make those available because it'll be for all.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then remember to put them on the large paper so we could read them, 11 by 17. Remember I had those last year? And it said for every dollar amount, I could see exactly what they were. And I have mine from last year. It was a great tool.
Michael had a great comment. You can put them on sticky notes for you.
No. You want me to wear 2 pairs of glasses, right? So it just answers so much when you could see that.
I'm not looking for any detailed explanation here, but I just think it's predictable that the budget would have gone for accounting, auditing, for particularly for professional services would have gone up almost $1 million for this year compared to
What
prior
page
years.
are you on and tell us
Same.
the number? Same page?
Same page.
Okay.
You're on professional services?
Yeah, we're anticipating spending a lot more for the North Fork
That's what I'm
negotiations
thinking,
and stuff.
There's that, but it's also engineering. So if we look at, I'm sorry, Kylie, can you pull up Department 58? We have a number of studies that have been under professional services for, you can read them all. Under engineering for professional services.
So there's structural engineering support for 15,000, electrical engineering support 25,000, land surveying support 15,000, water wastewater ordinance update year 100,000, water sewer engineering standards update 80,000, Arnold Sewer Master Plan 150,000, Ebbets Pass Master Plan 150,000, and water hydraulic modeling for Ebbets Pass 90,000.
And it adds up so quickly.
But I guess I'm wrong that doesn't include the anticipated legal services.
Legal has its own GL.
Yeah, okay.
Now, there are items within the water resources budget for the FERC relicensing. And that's the Jeff Hydromeyer and some of the other services that they use.
Okay. Did you see anything on here that you were alarmed about?
I've been talking about these same things the last 3 months. And so that's why, like this time I went through this and went directly to the notes because it gives all the explanations. They're all the same. They have been for the last 2-3 months. So that's why you go through and ask them because because it'll inform you and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, some of the things like I asked them, it says, oh, this is over. Accounting will monitor it. Well, what does that mean? No, I mean, you know what I'm saying? And I brought that up several times, monitor it. And then I would just say, well, I know it's a best estimate,
Mhm.
but, because I'm looking for like, key punch errors. Because remember the telephone did that 1 year and that missing that 1 0 makes a big difference or something.
This question on page 6 that under the gross heading of miscellaneous operating expense down second off the bottom of that group, third-party payment processing.
Yes, sir.
That's I guess that's maybe unavoidable, but it's sure, it's a big number.
It's
It is.
credit card fees.
That, those are the credit card fees that we pay, Global Pay, for being able to use credit cards.
Yeah.
And then part of that is also check processors, the company that people send their checks in to process on their bills. So it's a combination of both. Now, we do, if you go over to,
There's page 12, I think, third-party payment processing.
yeah, it shows up, page 12, you're correct, Director Cicada. It
Here's
shows
the
you how much
offset.
it is, but it also says we're offsetting a good part of that
Right.
from revenues.
Right.
We don't net the expense revenues against expenses. We show the true expenses. The
Hmm.
revenues show up in miscellaneous
We're at-
operating revenue.
So year to date, the expense is 269. And if I'm looking at this right, the revenue we brought in was 219, which brings us down to roughly 50,000 expense.
Okay, that's
They have to do it separately like that, but
Mhm.
it works. But it's still a lot of money. That's the one that I kept complaining. It's $88,000 a year.
And it's gotten higher.
Yes, I know.
no, it's
That's how I start charging customers.
it's less overall less than $4 per customer for that 50,000.
If you have all your customers using it, which you don't, so now do it. Not everybody's using credit card. Or other fees, if they send in a check or
Yeah.
whatever. But anyhow, I don't think, my opinion is still, the district shouldn't absorb that cost. And we are putting it forward to the customer now.
Yes.
It's just so expensive.
All right, well, I have no further questions on these two pages if you want to move on.
The next several pages, we dive into it by department, which gives you a little bit more detail for the different line items. And if you look at page number 8, this is non-departmental, where it's summarized up at the top in the different Y and Z codes. And then below, if there are items over what we anticipate to be 68% for the year plus 5%, those are the ones that are kind of highlighted there in pink. And then we give some explanations as to why they are over. And that's the text that you see in each one. Some of the items that you see may be over percentage wise because in case of, let's say, insurance is paid early in the year. So, within 3 months, we're already at full budget. And it's difficult to compare that to what it would be at 8 months. So there's a little backstory to a lot of these. Some of them is just over budget. And some things we just were unable to anticipate. But from my perspective, I don't always, I look at individual line items, especially as we prepare the budget for next year. Where are we and why did it go over? Is it a one-time thing or is it a trend that we need to adjust for? But if I'm looking at a budget item that's $5,000, we're already at 4,500. I won't sweat that because it's a small dollar amount. Also, when I talk to departments, I have them focus on 3 separate groups: salaries and benefits, service and supplies, and capital outlay. Within their service and supplies, and this is what you see here, everything from materials, supplies, outside services, professional services, etc. That's the grouping that I look at. You may be over in one and under in the other. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to go back and change a budget to match projected year-end actuals. I'd rather have what did we budget for originally so we can see where we are tracking that number. So part of my work and part of our work here is focusing on those key items that we know are going to affect the budget positively or negatively. The smaller ones, I hate to use this term, but it's budget dust when you're looking at 20-some million. I know it adds up, but when you have a large number of different objects that you're looking and tracking, you really need to focus on those that can have a material effect.
Right. Hearing you say that you aren't concerned about things like small items, but under that professional services, there's no budgeted amount. We've got what we paid, almost $1,400 in 23, 27, 25, and 24. But why don't we have a number plugged in for budget for 2025?
This is non-departmental.
Okay.
This is where everything falls that other departments don't do. And we really don't have any professional services that are required in non-departmental. We have things like HVAC repair, we have janitorial services, we have retiree health costs, insurance, those type of things.
Okay.
And just to give you an idea of those costs that you see related to like where you stand at a certain point in time, at the bottom of page 8, under miscellaneous non-operating, that's our LAFCO contribution. And that comes when we get our taxes, our property taxes from the county. They deduct our LAFCO contribution from those taxes. So being a member of LAFCO, we have to pay into that.
And that's the only payment, right? It'll be a little bit more. They take it all out of the first tax thing.
I think it's that first half.
I think so
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Because at 90%.
Yeah, and you
yeah.
usually get 55% of your property
Yeah.
taxes in that first installment.
Yeah. Either way, it won't be going over budget, I don't believe.
No. They want their money up front.
So what line item is LAFCO?
78210.
It's the last line item in the blue part and the explanations down here. So it says we're at 90.64%. If you see this right there,
Yeah.
that 90, and come all the way down here, and here's the line item description,
Oh, okay.
telling you why it's like that.
Right.
So pretty much it's paid in full for the whole year in the beginning of the year, January or something like that.
So, well, in this case, LAFCO we get it, we pay for it. Actually, it's deducted from our property tax revenues that come to us in January.
Right.
The gentleman that has run that LAFCO effort for, I don't know, a couple of decades. Did I hear that he's retiring?
Benoit, is that right?
Benoit, he was supposed to retire
I think he is-
10 years ago.
Yeah, He does-
He'll be missed.
he does other counties as well.
Yeah, he does.
But he has not retired yet. Is that?
I don't believe.
I haven't talked to him in over a year, but the last time I talked to him, it was about retiring. It's like, well, I'm gonna wait a little bit longer for, because he can't be replaced kind of is what
Yeah.
it is, I think.
Is it?
Seriously. Nobody wants the job and
Mm.
he's a good person.
Yeah, he is. Okay, so there's no need to be concerned about closing the doors or anything so far, right?
No,
Okay, good.
not yet.
So where are we going from here?
Go to page 9 and glance through that. Payouts was something that I always brought up all the time.
PTO payouts and
Yeah.
PTO payouts. Would you like an explanation of that, Director Thomas?
Sure.
PTO payout once a year. PTO has a cap on the number of hours that you can roll over.
Yeah.
If you anticipate going over that amount, in December, you request a payout and you get paid out for those amounts. Generally, it's a one-time amount unless somebody leaves the district and we have to pay them for any outstanding PTO. Comp time payout's different. Comp time can occur anytime during the year when a person works overtime. They can either get paid overtime, they can claim it as comp time, and at some point in the future, if it's comp time, they can get paid out. They request a payout. And that's where it shows under CTO payout.
Okay.
That's a little bit harder to try to anticipate because you never know what employees are going to be doing comp time, overtime, and so forth.
How much comp time have you got? PTO.
Yeah. I wish. I wish I had a nice check every December.
We had to change that policy.
Nah,
Nah.
they're doing the heavy lifting. We just have to spend a lot of time reading and researching.
Okay, I agree.
And I brought up things like, when I see material and supplies already at 94%, we should be somewhere around that 70. Now, if you look at material supplies combined in the one line item and we're still below it, then we're okay. But those kinds of things bother me a little bit. And you guys will look at that and say, okay, you guys know why they're up so high.
Mhm.
And then you'll know it's a one time or do need to, supplies expenses gone up so much in cost that we have to adjust.
Exactly.
And then the ozone system down there on page 9, I talked about. And if you turn to page 10, it'll tell you that ozone startup and training came in higher than expected. And this is one of those things I asked last time. Finance will continue to monitor this. So my question is, what do you mean by monitor it?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Just okay, or?
And Damon was here to respond.
Exactly.
Yeah, so he was
But it-
talking,
But see, I wasn't directing that comment to the departments. I'm directing it to like you and your staff. What do
I
you
get
mean
that.
monitoring it? Somebody gonna say, nope, you can't spend anymore? Then
No.
maybe the GM should say that. Sorry, you reached your budget.
but when it comes to ozone maintenance and things that we have to do to keep the plant running. We
Exactly.
try to estimate what it is. We didn't do a
Right.
very good job on that one, but they also
So-
did some, in this case, they did some work on the ozone generator and there was some work that had some startup work that had to be done.
And here's on page 10, another one that I called you on big time because I don't know how you could have, well, I think I know the answer, but anyhow, office expense, publications and subscriptions. Was that the copier? So,
No,
if I-
no, the copier was under capital outlay.
All right, so-
Department.
so why was publications and subscriptions due to water code updates and handbooks? Are you sure that's all it was?
That was.
Why did that come under publications and subscriptions for water code updates and handbooks?
Because it was, they looked at that as a publication, we're gonna just put it under there. Could have been under materials and supplies. Could have gone either way, and that is something that was not anticipated to be a purchase. But if you look at that, for that particular department, general management, we're probably pretty darn close to meeting all our costs for
Yeah.
the year. So if we're looking at an amount, obviously we under budgeted for that number completely.
What is the water code updates and handbooks? Where does that tie in to all of us working here?
It resides in general management. They follow, they have to.
Okay, but tell me, what is the book that we get?
I don't have. it
Cindy,
in
can you
front of
hear me? Director Sakana?
Yes, go ahead.
So it's the
Go.
water code, the California water code. It's all the rules and regulations that CCWD has to follow.
Okay.
And Michael and I have a book back here that we reference regularly.
Oh, so you bought a new book?
It's a book and the updates,
Gotcha.
it sends a new book when there's updates.
Okay, I'm familiar with that now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just need to know how it was used. It's like, are we updating our own books or what it was? But okay. And that isn't something that's going to be like that every year, right? In that large of an amount?
Yeah, and
Okay.
as Rebecca said, they send updates as needed.
Mhm.
So if there are no updates, we don't get a new book.
Right,
So we'll just have to probably budget for, assuming that we're gonna get updates.
I would say you're going to get updates in the next couple of years here in California for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's the nasty old payouts. No. I won't wait you done with that one. And payouts again. Postage, we talked about why was postage high?
We've been
just-
mailing out a lot more items.
More
coming
mailing,
out
yeah.
there. It's for a postage machine.
So like on
It's
your
also-
expense notes, you should say that we did, 50% more mailings or whatever,
Yeah,
and
And that
instead of it's
also-
coming in higher because we see that it's coming in higher.
and that also includes FedEx and UPS.
Gotcha. That's what Russ needs for his packets.
Yeah, I'm probably responsible for at least half of that.
At least. So that would be it. Kind of crazy, huh?
And these computer license
Well, I bring up that
Con-
one all the time.
contracts. Seems like you used to be able to just buy a computer and use it until it fell apart, but now you have to pay somebody for a contract to maintain it.
License contract, yeah, all the software.
Yeah, but think about what Tyler's costing us for all that stuff too,
No.
It's
Maybe
very expensive.
Kelly can answer how much longer that bleeding is going to take place.
No, it's gonna be there forever. It's a license, an annual license contract. I know.
Oh, okay.
It's one of those
But
gifts that keeps
Ty-
giving.
Tyler, I can see that we're still using that, but how about Springbrook?
We are no longer, we no longer have actually through the end of this year, the maintenance agreement will cease to exist, but we are going to have some money available in the budget just for if the system breaks, Springbrook breaks, because that's our historical record. Tyler only goes back 1 year. Everything prior to that is on Springbrook and we'll maintain it on our servers Dylan will maintain that, but if he has issues, we need to have some money so he can reach out to Springbrook and be able to do that.
Before I forget, because, I always complain about the Tyler stuff. Maybe in next month or two, maybe June, let's say, because I won't be here for May. I'd really like to see the breakdown of what Tyler costs us every year. I want to know what modules we're using and the license contract, because we've already bought it now. That's
Yeah.
all come and gone, but what is our annual costs on Tyler?
And that will be
Just the software maintenance. I don't, what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gonna be disgusting, I'm sure.
and actually that'll be on your green sheets. Because we list,
okay.
list each module based on their invoice and their annual cost for each module.
And well, maybe this will be done offline. I still think that when we approved Tyler, how many years ago? I don't think we were looking at all the modules that we have today, which there's nothing wrong with having those modules today. I think it's very helpful, but I don't think when we approved it, I think we were thinking of some more basics, but now we have, the time and attendance and all this kind of stuff. No, but you pay for each module.
What we're getting now is what was included in the original contract, correct?
Good. Okay, then.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm good. I'm done with all these.
Okay, what's next?
Uh, Anything you want to say in the cash fund balances or anything? Those are really just kind of for our, to look out. If you have any questions? These show us like in our, the projects, where we are cash flow. And I think we kind of see those a little bit
Did you
in the
do,
open meeting. And
Right.
they're just for us. And if we have questions to ask, otherwise, I don't think we do much discussion on that usually, do we?
no, and then you also have the CIP
Right.
worksheets after that, and
Yeah.
Director Thomas should be very familiar with the CIP.
Yeah, you probably just saw those in engineering, I think it was, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was going to be a quick meeting, didn't I?
The next item will go very quickly. The last item, he just talks on forever and ever.
Well, she'll have a 3-minute limit. Maybe 10 or something. Something reasonable.
Okay, yep.
All right. Any online comments for item 3A, monthly financials? We don't have anybody online, just staff? Okay. Staff, if you want to talk, you better speak up. All right, let's go on to item 3B, updates to the purchasing policy, and we have Jeffrey again.
Yes, ma'am. We, as a result of a recent audit by, the state and the federal and OES on behalf of the feds, we need to make some adjustments to our contract and our purchasing languages. There was the existing financial policy, management policy 5.02 purchasing policy was last revised by the board on June 28, 2023. That particular adjustment basically made some changes to the authorization levels and also to the titles of the people on that list. That was the main one. We did dive into the actual purchasing policy, just the authorization level. The last time we looked at the policy itself was 2020. So this particular one item before you, the changes Basically, it was done in response to a compliance assessment on grant subaward DR 4431. Kylie was the one who had to respond to this and make recommendations on our changes to our purchasing policy. And this was in regards to a 2019 winter storm event. Two key processes that we had to look at is to add language to our existing policy. The first bullet is in the first bullet point, prior to awarding any contract or subcontract funding with federal dollars, the district shall verify that the prospective contractor and any subcontractors have not been suspended or debarred from receiving federal grants. So we have,
Funds of any kind, probably.
yeah, so we now include that in our purchasing policy and our contract language, and we actually go through now and go to the federal website just to make sure they're still on list. So this is a procedural on our part, and the other part is to put it into language.
And what happens if, we miss somebody that's been debarred or not eligible for funding and we give them some money?
Right now, we got a slap on the wrist.
Oh, so that happened.
That's what the result of this is.
Gotcha.
No, we did check it. I don't know if it was debarred. I don't think they were, but not checking it, we got a slap on the wrist.
Okay, so now we know.
Yes, and that's what this is all about. Or
And who's responsible? What department?
it most likely would be engineering. because
Right, 'cause
that's
they're
where
gonna
most of our
hire the
construction-
contractor or the sub, blah, blah, blah.
Right, and that's where the federal funds come from.
Yep.
Remember, this is for federal grants.
Yep.
Now, we put this language in all our contracts.
Yeah.
Because it's easier for us that way.
Well, I mean, having it for across the board, if you're not eligible, because maybe they did something wrong, maybe it'd be a good idea to not have that contractor working for us, right?
Yeah.
So this is, it's only dealing with some, like a grant that you're, submitting for funding through a federal program, but how, do we ever get federal dollars retroactively? It's like we have a storm event and we have to hire contractors to come out and help us, I don't know, do excavation or something so we can get to some of our facilities. And then we turn in a bill later, it gets funded by federal. How do we have to query whether a person's been suspended during that call that we make in the middle of the night? Can you
Yes, we
come?
do.
Holy
We should probably. at some
Have a
point, if
list
we're
of
having
federally approved people.
Federal, and this is what happened. It was a 2019 storm event.
Mhm.
So what we should do is if we're looking in case of ops, because they're the ones that generally call out for storm events for things.
It's usually an emergency.
Emergency, yeah, they handle it, not necessarily engineering. We should probably have that, they should have a systematic review of all the vendors they're going to use for potentially for storm events or disaster events. And just periodically check. Once a month, go online. You can go to the federal website and see if they're still listed.
That or have a pre-approved, if you will, list of vendors to use for certain things. Here's our tree people we can use. They were approved on such and such date. Next type of potential event. I mean, the best you can.
Do the best you can. That's what I'm saying is if you periodically check especially during the winter time, to see on a monthly basis, they're still available. They're still. available.
Is it easy to go on there and say, give me a list of those not approved? Then you
Yeah,
print it
it
and
is.
here you go, don't use these.
Yeah.
That might be easier than the other way around.
No, it's very easy to check.
Okay.
Well, if that's the way you're verifying, that's one thing. But when I read this, I was thinking that somebody had to call the contractor and say, "Oh, by the way, Joe, have you been suspended or disbarred from?" You know, is there something that the contractor has to make some proactive response, or? we can
I
just-
think it's saying the way I read it in Cal OES is that we have to do our due diligence to look to make sure nobody was kicked
Yeah.
to the curb.
And if we get into this, probably just as easy right now as we can go by bullet point to turn to the red line and look at page number 9, section E, uniform guidance requirements. That's the attachment to this staff report.
Okay,
Gave you the red line version so you can see
Yeah.
all the changes.
right. Yeah.
So if you can see that, it says talks about the very first paragraph
Okay.
prior to awarding. This verification must be conducted through the federal systems for award, sam.gov. We all have access to that and documented in the procurement file.
Yep.
But then it goes down and says the contractor is also, if they use subcontractors, has to verify that they've checked their subcontractors as well.
Right.
But generally, if you have a disaster event, you deal directly with the contractor. And there's your hammer, item number 4. Says failure to comply with these requirements may result in contract termination and disqualification from future procurements.
Okay.
Yep, very good.
The next key item, which should show up under item F, just a summary, it says for all procurements utilizing federal funding, the district shall adhere to the federal standards listed in the roadmap to procurement compliance checklist and incorporate all required contract provisions to ensure compliance with federal procurement regulations. And that is at the top of page 10. That's the checklist you go through.
And all of these words printed in red were created here, or are they available on government websites?
I would
The
assume.
language that they provided us,
Yeah, it
it came from the
FEMA.
feds.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't our language. You have to actually follow the feds.
Okay.
language.
All right.
And there were some other little changes throughout, some of them grammar, some of them punctuation, and some other small changes that you can see. But there's nothing that changed the individual items within the purchasing policy. It was just a cleanup beyond those 2 paragraphs for language.
And then also just the addition of the $10,000 for the plant, or the operations manager and the plant manager since
Yes, ma'am.
increased.
And it's our request that you recommend this to the full board for adoption.
Uh, I probably have the worst reputation on the board for picking at nits, but this addition of the word capability under
What page?
on page 11, middle of the page, the bidder has the ability, previously had the ability, comma, and skill to perform, but they want you to insert the words ability, capability, and skill.
Well, actually, it was probably, and this is where it was Microsoft Word at its worst. It was supposed to be adding a comma after capability, but it redlined capability, then put in capability, comma.
Oh, so that's what, because I was wondering why you're still
Yeah, some
using
of
the
these
same
have-
words, but I thought maybe there was a space out of order. or
And that's
something.
where some of it is punctuation changes.
Yeah.
You know, when you go through
Yeah.
Word doc and do review,
Okay.
Yeah.
When are we going to start giving the PTO to an employee called AI?
Yeah.
So,
I don't think we're gonna have AI other than it's on telephones or.
my question then is for this to go to the full board, do you mind if I accept all the changes for grammar?
I'm
Just
good with
leave
that.
those out.
yeah.
I'm good with everything that you
Okay.
said.
But
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave the red line for the
Please,
language.
for the other
Additional
board
language.
members, yeah. Because that, because it's just much easier to look at what you changed.
Sure.
Take it to the board.
Yeah, first.
Good.
All right, no one online with any comments? All righty. Let's go on to item 3C, report on utility billing arrears with Kelly Richards. Thank you, Jeffrey, for everything.
Certainly, thank you.
Good
So quiet and
afternoon.
calm in here.
I know, it is very quiet, and calm.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, Director Cicada, Director Thomas. I am here to report today on the status of our utility billing, water and wastewater arrearages for the district. Not sure, are you guys able to zoom in on that at all? Thank you.
Oh, good, thank you.
Okay, so ran several reports throughout the system and was able to, now this is more of a high level look at the.
Can you
arrears,
zoom
at
a
the-
couple more zooms?
At the delinquency itself.
Oh, yeah, I'll go back. Okay, I can handle that.
We can get more granular. I just wanted to present the numbers today so that we had an idea. And the reporting out of the system, we can look at the different service areas. We can look at the different routes, water versus wastewater. I mean, we can pull different data points out of the reports that we're able to get from the system, but really what we're looking at here, and I think we've zoomed in and actually cannot see the 8+ months on there. But oh, it's on the next page.
There we go.
Okay, so one thing that I did just want to speak to specifically regarding the 8 months. So we bill every 6 months. So when we're looking at delinquencies, we look at it billing cycle by billing cycle, so roughly a 60-day period of time. So when we're looking back 8 months, we're looking 4 billing periods plus.
Okay.
And when we see these numbers here, they are broken down by residential, then commercial, and then, do you have the pointer for the? Okay, the first line there, the 593, 779, 16, that's going to be your residential delinquency for water and wastewater. 96,415 cents is going to be your commercial delinquency for water and wastewater. This is for cycle 1. So this is Wallace, Valley Springs, Copperopolis, and West Point, Wilseyville. 21,177 is going to be our landscape or irrigation meters. And then it gives you that total down there at the bottom. The total that you see to the far right is going to be for all arrearage. So whether it's 1 billing cycle, 2 billing cycles, 3,
That's the
and so
total in
on.
arrears, yeah.
We're looking at a total cycle 1 arrearage of 1.3 million. What I did, and then obviously in blue, what we're looking at is cycle 2. Same thing, residential at 178,000, commercial at 83,000, irrigation or landscape at 4,000. So there's quite a big difference between the 2 cycles. So cycle 2 being primarily Ebbets Pass. One thing that we do need to say here is we do participate in that annual UB delinquency on the tax roll teeter program. So the bulk of this amount that we see here for the 8+ month is more than likely going to go through that. It was going to go through that process. And so then we embark on that collection process internally to try to drum these numbers down before they go to the county for that teeter.
This list that we're looking at, are those all current employees or just somehow that includes the dollars from people that no longer are customers, but we can't collect them?
These are just active accounts.
Really?
This does not include inactive accounts because what we do with those, which we've
So
spoken
they
about in the
get
past, we
expensed.
send those to the collection bureau.
Um,
So this is these are just active utility billing accounts.
can you go back to the 60-day portion for me? And I'm wondering, so for residential, that's 2 months, so that's one billing cycle? Is that correct on the top one and one
Right,
billing?
so
Okay,
2 months is one billing cycle, 4 months is two billing cycles, 6 months, three, and
So-
then the 8 is four.
so on that 280,000 and change, how much do we bill that period?
Ooh.
So I'm wondering what percentage of this, I'm just trying to get a handle of how many
And
customers
that,
are doing that.
that I can report on. I did not
Okay.
report on it this time, but I do have the
Maybe for
capability
next
to
time.
say, yes. I can say, for cycle one in particular, we billed out in January. And here's what we're showing is still outstanding from that original amount billed. And then what the percentage,
Yes.
the percentage.
That would be
basically that's
kind of
outstanding.
cool, because I think we need to take a look and say, how are we gonna fix this? Because if we're only getting, half of our money,
Sure.
eventually it's gonna catch up to us, right? If you're always robbing from Peter to pay Paul kind of a
Right.
thing. So it'd be nice, I think, for us to be able to look and see where we're at. If we're looking at a handful, which I don't think we're looking at a handful. I think it's a little bit more than that. What would you say, a
Right.
third? If
Right.
you had to guess?
And I would say, roughly for cycle one, for every billing that we do, we are at about 1.2. I want to say about 1.2 million. So we're looking fairly good as far
Right.
as what is still outstanding, but it's, when you talk to employees who have been here when we were doing delinquencies, past dues, lock-offs for non-payment, these were drastically lower than they are now.
So at some point we were talking about, because right now we only charge a $10 late fee for each billing cycle. Is that right?
That is what we have in our fee schedule. Yes, $10.
So haven't we been working on trying to change that? Because if it's only costing them $10 a month, they'll wait and pay annually or whatever. Like they'll pay when they get notified that it's going to go on the tax bill, so they'll probably pay it. But in the meantime, we don't have our cash flow. So we have talked about it. Where are we at on that? Are we going to try and bring something?
So we are scheduling to have time at the beginning of April with Tyler to actually redo the entire delinquency process within the system. Which will mean that obviously we'll have the capability to run these past due scenarios for both cycle one and cycle two. And it will be able to distinguish for us how many of those accounts, which we brought up in the past, Tyler unfortunately is not configured to do right now because we did not do it during implementation initially, to distinguish between how many of these accounts are water only, water and sewer,
Right,
sewer only,
right.
so that we can make sure that when we do assess any kind of fee in the system, that it is distributed accordingly.
Well, I think when we make it a percentage late fee of some kind, something ridiculous, like 10%, like MSD does, you're gonna find that half the time, I don't think a lot of these people will be late, especially if it keeps, like
Keeps
you want to
giving.
charge 10% on the past due balance, not including the previous interest charge, but if you owe $200 from the previous billing just for service, there's 10% fee on that. And then now if you're $400 late, you're $40, that $10, it's got to be a percentage. And I know there's some kind of a limit on that, but in the same
Yes.
token, you should be working on that side by side. So when
Yeah.
Tyler's ready, we are ready to put it forward.
Well, and I think one of the elements
That
that
might
we're
stop it.
right, and one of the elements that we're looking at, which we reported on pretty frequently, is assessing, whether or not we truly should move forward with the delinquency process and utilizing lockoffs as a mechanism for, recouping payment. Because we have not been doing that since the onset of COVID. And then also, really assessing where we stand as far as our fees are concerned, because we do want to make sure that if we're running a process, that we are recouping the appropriate money for that process to be run. But really, what I hear from staff, again, who has been here, a long time is, even when we initiated that first, past due notice and initiated that first penalty, we had quite a bit of response from our customer base. And as you move forward in the delinquency process to the point of shutoffs, it really truly was, which has been the case at the agencies I've worked at as well, you have the same, unfortunately, the same folks usually that
Right.
show up at that point, that make it to the end of that process. And as much as we can drum these delinquencies down or this arrearage down, we want to try to do that because we certainly don't want to only utilize our agreement with the county for UB delinquencies and, for lack of a better term, abuse that. We should be mobilizing and collecting as much as possible on the front end.
Are we allowed to do the lock offs now? Because remember, we weren't allowed to for some time. The state said we couldn't, but can we do it now? If we
Yes.
were capable? Okay, so
Yes,
that's
we are
one.
capable of that. We have to make sure that the process is built appropriately within Tyler. Because this, again, goes back to configuration.
And
of the
that's fine.
system.
That's
Yeah, we
fine.
have to make sure that it's built.
I would recommend you find out what we can charge percentage wise, because I think it would behoove the district because you probably have some. I mean, if it's only going to cost them $60 a year to pay annually, that certainly doesn't help us any. We want a better cash flow. And if they all of a sudden had to pay 10% each 30 days they're late, it might make them think otherwise. And there's no reason why we should be their banker. I mean, $60 for them to use the money for a year, that's pretty good. It's pretty good, low interest.
Right.
So definitely work on that and bring that in at the same time. That
Okay,
way we can have it approved.
sure. Yeah, no, that's a great
But I
idea.
know there's some kind of a limit, there's some kind of rules, but we have great legal department.
There are, I think some of them, I think Prop 218 has something to do with it. I think there are some legal restrictions behind how
I-
much you can
I-
charge.
There is something to charge, but I don't think it's a 218 with that.
It's Prop 26.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
So there's something in there, but there is a percentage you can charge.
So under Prop 26, that's. Prop 26 addresses fees and charges. As a public agency, we can only recover what it costs us to perform that service.
See, I do disagree with you, and
Well-
I could be wrong.
But there's
But
the,
this is
for
different.
that, let's say it is the processing of handing out a delinquency, a late notice, past due notice. We can only charge for handing that out what it costs us to do. Now, the percentages for outstanding delinquencies, that's a different category.
Right.
But we can only charge what it costs us
Yeah.
for a number of
Well,
other items under Prop
With the
26.
delinquency, the percentage is different. So please have legal department find out what that is.
Yeah, we will, but that's a different thing. Like I say, the process of actually mailing out.
Yeah,
a
I totally
past due notice,
understand
we
that,
can
Jeff.
only- And it's been $10 for us
Yeah.
for eons.
I understand that, but we've never charged them the
A percent,
fee
I guess.
for not paying.
No,
So-
you're right. The only.
And
fees we
that's
have-
got to change. That should have been changed years ago, quite frankly. But it is what it is. Here we are. And I would at least find out, in fact, the next finance meeting, if you guys could find out what the limitations are
Sure.
on charging a finance fee on whatever their delinquent dollar amount is, not how much to make it happen, because that's that $10 stuff.
Sure.
Thank you.
so really what we're trying to do here as we look at these numbers is determine what the best course of action is moving forward. Obviously, moving forward with the past due, part of the process is going to, change customer payment activity. And so we're hoping that will not only, reduce the amount of, open receivables that we have, but then also improve our cash flow overall, from the rate.
And
Rate revenue.
even when you do put it on the tax roll, you can also add your fees for that, putting it together, any of the late charges that have been assessed and will be assessed by a certain time frame. You just have to break it down for that
Right,
customer.
right. So this is
Kathy, hang on one second. Russ has a comment.
Well, I think I'll let her finish and then I just ask some questions afterwards.
you can go right ahead.
Okay, looking at that, the column that's labeled 2 months,
Yes,
if we bill every 2 months and the customer is 2 months late, that's conceivably could be 4 months late.
So this is not, the above balances show arrearage based on a 60-day billing cycle. We did not include the current balances for each cycle. So this is not reflecting the most recent bill that we just issued for each cycle. It started with the billing prior to that.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then looking at the cycle 1 versus cycle 2 on landscape irrigation, it's 10 times the arrearage is 10 times larger in cycle 1 as compared to, you said that Ebbets Pass is cycle 2.
Correct, and we have many more irrigation landscape meters within cycle 1 than we do cycle 2.
Yeah. I think that the justification, if you want to call it that, the rationale for not doing lockoffs has been humanitarian concerns and stuff. But what would prevent us from just immediately shutting off all landscape irrigation that
Right.
are delinquent? Just
Right, so I mean, we can move forward with shutting off and locking off for non-payment for any water account. We just need to make sure that we're able to run that process within our billing system.
Separating
So
that.
that's a separate concern. So we would need to be able to essentially, in this hypothetical situation, we would need to be able to pull out those landscape accounts and push them through the delinquency or shut off process and, be able to separate them from residential and commercial.
So our $1 million Tyler program doesn't know how to separate it. They have to build this, or we
No.
just maybe didn't think
It's-
about it, and that's
It's
understandable.
Configuration.
Okay.
It's all configuration.
But you would
So-
think they would have said stuff to you like, you don't need these separate for whatever, you know what I mean, when they're helping with your configuration.
And that's what's
But you weren't
difficult
here for
about
that.
not being here during that process, because I think if you would have had a team, these are the types of things that get brought up when you're going through
Yep.
implementation.
When you have more than
When you
one
have more
person
than one
thinking about
person.
it. Yeah.
Correct. So now, unfortunately, like I've said, the cards are stacked against us in a sense that we essentially have to go in and we're moving forward, which I mentioned, I think at the last finance committee meeting, we're moving forward with Tyler on doing a business process analysis. That is what they call it. It's like a current future state analysis, even though that is used more for implementation. This is, you're currently in the system. We're doing a business process analysis. We're looking at how you're utilizing the system. Is it meeting your needs? And if not,
How can
what do
get
we need to do
better?
to change that? So that's what we are embarking on the UV side right now, which could mean that a lot of what we're used to seeing configuration wise on the UV side is going to need to be changed.
If that's gonna take a little while, if we went to that percentage, it wouldn't matter if you're sewer or water. If you're late, you get charged whatever that percentage is. So that may work in our favor for a little while.
Right.
okay.
Either, any way you cut it, I mean, we need to do something.
I haven't tried to kill very many sacred cows, but
What?
I think that this cycle 1 and cycle 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the impetus, the foundation reasoning behind having cycle 1 and cycle 2 was when we had meter readers.
Correct.
They just couldn't get all of them in 1 month. I would submit to you that we should be looking forward to the time where we can not do cycle 1, cycle 2, just do
One at a time.
I'd like to go billing once a month, and Tyler certainly has the horsepower, the bandwidth in their system to do that. I mean, they do accounting for agencies that are 100 times larger than we are. But if we build once a month, it would immediately eliminate this often repeated thing. Oh my God, my bill is $200 a month, and it's not $200 a month. It's $100 a month for a 2-month cycle. That we didn't have the capability before. We had the radio read capability and the online monitoring and stuff. Explain it to me so that I understand it, why we can't just go right to that ASAP.
Sure. So the impact that that would have on staff would need to be measured because it's not only staff impact, but it's also monetary impact to the district. We will be duplicating every billing effort then moving forward, whereas we only bill each cycle or each group 6 times a year. Now we're billing everybody 12 times a year. So you're looking at additional costs for mailing. You're looking at additional staff time for collecting and auditing reads. You're looking at additional just running the billing process. Auditing for us every single month for half of our billing cycle takes about a day and a half. So we're looking at, and I'm running that process currently. And so you have to comb through hundreds of accounts and look for accuracy. You have to make sure that our field staff are able to go out and collect whatever reads that they need to collect on top of everything else that they have going on out in the field.
Wait, you say that we, even though we have radio reporting
We
capability,
have AMI and we're able to ping the network, but we do not get 100% of our reads. They are only guaranteed 98% of our reads. So what that means is usually, and I'll give this as an example, we reached out to our Jenny Lynn crew this week and said, hey, a majority of the reads came through for Jenny Lynn, but there's a little over 100 that we need you to go out and get because they did not come through on the network. Abbott's Pass, we've got about 100 that, so every month they will still need to go out and there's still an element of meter read collection that has to happen. And that's a misconception about AMI, that you get 100% of the reads 100% of the time. You do not.
So when you missed those reads, so you did your cycle and 100 were missed, you couldn't rerun like an exception report and rerun those ones that were missed?
So what happens is we
Reread
go
it
into
or
the
whatever.
billing system and we say, okay, Tyler, we're billing out, cycle 1. Give us all of the meters and accounts that need to be billed out for cycle 1. It creates a file. We put that file into the Mueller database, into Centrix, and say, okay, AMI network, give us the reads for these meters. We're going to get about 97 to 98% of those reads back, but there's still hundreds of meters that will need to go out and be collected. That is
So
pretty
why
commonplace.
could, the 100, let's say the 100 that didn't get read, why couldn't you resubmit those 100 into Centrix?
because
next
they're
day.
not, for whatever reason, the network is not collecting a read for that meter. It could be
Ever?
that there's a car in the way. It could be that there's something obstructing the communication between the node and the box and the collector. So the guys have to go out in the field, and these meters change every billing cycle. It's not necessarily the same ones over and over again. So they would have to go out and they're able to utilize their handhelds, and a lot of times they're able to radio collect. But there are some that they're not able to get, that they physically have to go to the meter and find out, did the wires get chewed through by a gopher?
Do you have a list of those so you can see the problem ones? In case they're the same ones each time?
So
Try and
they-
figure out why to lessen that each billing
So
cycle.
every time that we do that, the guys are now getting more accustomed to seeing when there's certain ones that pop up, and they will go out and troubleshoot those. But that also takes time as well. So when it comes time for their month to do billing or go out and get reads, they go out and get the reads, they find the ones they need to troubleshoot, and then they kind of have a reprieve to work on other things for a month until they're back doing that again. So it's just, if we did that every month, I feel like it's not impossible. And I'm certainly not saying that it is impossible for us to do that. Other agencies bill every month. But there would have to be a lot of thought put into the impact on our operations staff, the impact on administrative services staff. We're sending out, almost 14,000 bills every month instead of just 6, at 0.5, or 7 every month. And then not only that, but customers now are going to be paying double the fees if they utilize our online payment system, right?
Yeah.
When we run delinquency processes, they're going to be subject to more delinquency fees and potentially more shut-offs if we go that route. So
Well,
it's just,
What if we did
duplicating
something
everything.
like all, and you know what I would recommend, Russ, why don't we give them a year or two to get this dialed in?
I'm not-
But I could see maybe,
If it's that big a deal, it's just once a year.
well, but the other thing though is what if we did it instead of two different sections? If everybody got billed at the same time every other month? Would that be helpful? Maybe, instead of having two different sections billed, so you're still billing every month, just different sections.
that's what we do now. So we bill out cycle 1 in January, cycle 2 in February, cycle.
Right. So what
yeah.
I'm saying is make it only all your customers are billed at the same time, but January, March, May, that kind of whatever you decide.
Yeah, and I think
6
we'll
times
still
a year.
run into what Director Thomas was saying about people being confused about whether they're paying for a monthly bill or
Yeah.
a bi-monthly bill.
But I think you gave valid argument as why we probably shouldn't go every month, but doing it all at the same time. It's just, I think doing all the customers at one time on the same month
Mhm.
shouldn't be, because you still have your 30-day reprieve to catch up on everybody else or
Yeah.
whatever. It's
Yeah,
just that
and-
you have the 14,000 instead of the 6,500.
And I know that we hear from customers who are, who have, some difficulty understanding that, the billing cycles are every 60 days. And again, like I said, there are agencies that bill every month. And I can certainly reach out to those agencies and see, what those efforts look like for them. Every agency is different, but I do know that a lot of this bi-monthly, billing scheduling is because of the meter reading aspect. We used to have to manually read the meters, and that was every agency that I came from, and every agency that I was familiar with was always every 2 months, because you had to, mobilize your field staff and they had to go out there and read the meters. Then you had to audit. Then you take the other half of the city and you go do this, or the other half of the county and you go do it again the next month. So it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be looked at as an option. And I completely agree with that, because we should evaluate how we're doing things to make things more efficient or better for our customers. I just think we need to bring everybody into play. That would be Damon and Pat and their staff, and, Jeff and me and our staff, and really sitting down and looking at what does that entail in the long run for us internally, and will that be best for the customer moving forward?
How do you feel about asking that question?
Well,
No, some good information though, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean,
But
we
is there
should,
more
now that we're
questions you wanna
AMI, there's a
comment
lot
on?
of
Go for it.
benefits.
Yeah.
Mhm.
okay,
Take
I
a
would,
breath.
I would be overjoyed if you could schedule that meeting and talk to the guys and just, what I'm trying to avoid is another 3 years from now, when we have another rate hearing and this room is filled up with people that are saying, oh my God, I've never lived in a place where the water was so expensive, and they're thinking in their heads that it's costing them it's monthly, and it's not. That would, I think that would reduce the crowd by half, and maybe the volume of the comments by.
I would like that on a survey. How much does your bill cost you each month?
Yeah.
That's a survey thing, because I don't think all of our customers can't figure that out. I'm
This is just a point of information, but I have a friend that lives down in Southern California, and I ask her what she pays per month, and sometimes she pays $900 a month for her single family residential water only. 900.
okay, so what town does she live in, and what is her home value? 3 million? 4 million?
She's
Where to our
Probably-
700s?
probably more than that, but they're living on a fixed income like all the other people. live
Yeah,
in
but
here.
if they have
Like,
that value
run
of
a-
the home, they had to have made some pretty good money. I mean, bottom line is it's disgusting regardless.
Yeah,
Who
but,
wants to pay $900 a month for water?
but this is an agency, Cal Water, that's handled by the PUC, not by Prop 218. But it's still, I only mentioned that to put things in perspective. I mean, people here have really a very wonderful service and extraordinarily low prices. We just need to try to convince them of that. But I don't know, I was excited and I'm still very pleased that we made the decision to spend that close to $5 million for the water meters, but I thought that we could get around to doing it once a month, and I thought it would be a savings, but I don't want to make any extraordinary work for you or for anybody in your group, but you say that, yeah, prices would go up, effort would go up. Just do some calculations on the back of a napkin and just tell the board, it's suggested that we should look at billing once a month, and here's some information that you ought to consider, that it might cost another $1,000 or $2,000 or $10,000 a month to do that, and then let the board decide whether that's worth it.
Yeah, one of the questions I have, and I think the problem lies with the Tyler side of things, in my opinion. If you don't think so, well, Mike, it seems like you guys are always doing all this extra stuff, and I keep hearing, be more efficient. Where has Tyler helped on that? Have they? Or is that still that new stage we need another year or two? Where do you think, because you're saying, all these steps that you have to do in the auditing, why should there be that much auditing? It should be a report that's ran. And what are you looking for in case they didn't get billed? And why
No.
would that be?
So
I
we
could see an audit
even
6
for-
months.
Right, even when we were manually reading meters, you had to audit the reads. So sometimes the reads come back in, you get a read that comes in through the system, and whether it be through the network or from somebody who went out and collected it, by lifting up a lid.
So, excuse me 1 minute, what do you mean by audience? Some real person is looking at all the numbers
I am
for 14,000 people?
six to 7,000.
So my question is, why? We have this beautiful system. Why
is a
couldn't you
part
do a
of-
report that's called like an exception? And exception is,
It does.
And
It
how
gives
many
us an
people?
Exception report,
and how many people are in that exception report each billing cycle?
thousands.
Why, if we have
Because-
such a system?
Because they look at, so what the system looks at is it looks at billing usage. A lot of it is consumption based. And the way that the Tyler system is built is it looks at the previous billing cycle, which in my billing expertise, it should not be looking at that. It should be looking at the same billing cycle from the past year, because that's
Yes.
apples to apples.
Yes.
If we're transitioning seasonal, right? You're going out of summertime, you're going into wintertime, irrigation systems are being turned off. To say, oh, we've got, drastic reduction in water consumption from the last billing cycle. Well, of course, people are shutting off their irrigation system.
Right.
Same thing when you're ramping up in the summertime. Our billing, audit list skyrockets because people are clicking their
So-
irrigation systems on. But we have to look and see, for example, if a read comes through off the network and we're going, ooh, something looks weird here, or the consumption looks off. We go into Centrix, into the AMI database, and we go, looks like this person has possibly a leak or an issue on their side. Then as a part of the billing process, our CSRs will reach out to these folks. But we have to go in and make sure that when we're billing out, it's as accurate as possible before we issue it. So there is always an auditing element that happens. It's the same thing when you run a payroll. You would expect that the system would be able to run the payroll, but you still have to go in and review and make sure that everything is okay and is dialed in. We have to do that on the billing side as well. It's just a second set of eyes, if you will, to make sure that we're not incorrectly billing folks when it goes out.
So do you
I
have
like
more,
software, but there's still a little bit of,
do you have more
Only review.
exceptions using Tyler than you did manually reading?
No, I would say it's just different. Like before, it was more that we had to audit maybe, and I hate to say it, we have very capable people here, but anybody in finance will tell you, you get a second check because sometimes your eyes play tricks on you or you miss a
Absolutely.
number.
Yeah.
So same thing with the guys out in the field when they were manually reading meters, and this used to happen when I was a meter reader. You write down a number and then you send it into the ladies in the office and they audit it and go, well, that's not right. So we got to go back out there and take a look, you know, so here now it's predominantly reads that are coming in off the network. So you want to make sure that you're not getting a funky read, you know, where you're expecting that this customer usually uses about 2,000 cubic feet every billing period. And now they're at 6,000, but you see that, oh, one of the guys had to go out there and collect it on his handheld because it wasn't communicating and they put an extra zero in there or something, right?
Yeah.
We go in there and just make sure that everything is, you know, dialed in and as accurate as possible before we send that billing.
So back to your comment that you said that you feel that the exception report should be based on the previous year. We can't do that yet because we haven't been billing that long, or have we? Are we
No, I
okay?
just don't think it's a capability of the system,
Alright.
capability of the system. But these are the things that we are going, that we, when we do our business process analysis with Tyler, not having gone through the configuration and the implementation on the UB side, between the staff in customer service and myself, we probably have about 3 to 4 dozen questions, unanswered questions from Tyler that we need to have addressed during this analysis.
When I made that little comment, like I or whatever, it's not directed at you. I
Yes.
get frustrated with the software system. It's like, how can that be?
And I don't take it
So-
I don't take it personally. It's just, it is what it is. It's the system that we're using, but where I feel like, you know, what needs to happen on our side is where I feel my job is to make sure that, yes, I'm utilizing it every day, but we have a number of other staff that are utilizing this every hour of every day of their workday. And so if we're not dialed in and we're not utilizing the system to the best of its capability, or we're not configured correctly, we need to get that fixed so that.
So ask that question about your comment. You're the expert in the billing. I mean, that's the way I believe you to be in looking at these exceptions. You think it
Well-
should be that way, you should ask for that.
Right.
Well, it wouldn't solve a problem if it's simply just compared this month to the same month last year. It would also have to have the capability of saying, okay, well, that looks odd, but what is the consumption? But well, first of all, they would ask, this is a very high bill compared to last month. And then after determining that raises a flag, then let's go look and go electronically, computer wise, look at what it was last year. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. That has to have that functionality available.
So I have been in billing systems where that has been the case and it's all back-end configuration. I can't see on my,
Yeah.
I am a super user in the system, but I am still limited as far as what I can do on my end. So it's almost like we need to go through this and say, can it do this?
Yeah.
And then they open up their side of the system and go, yes, we just need to set this parameter and this parameter and this
Well,
parameter.
it's missing some parameters, I think,
Yeah.
with what do you consider high? Like on our report, we wanted that 5%, right? So where's that magic parameter and what do they consider high? Not just, is it
And we can
50
set those
cubic feet
thresholds as
over
well.
the previous or whatever?
Right.
But I would get on that when you have all this extra time.
Right.
But I do see it as a very high priority.
Yes.
You got this system, and if you guys have to spend all this time on that, where's the efficiency at?
Right, right.
Well,
Yeah.
Getting back to your percentages, if it's 98% effective, but still, if there's a 2% error, you might have to go look at 300 meters. And
Exactly.
Right. So like I said, for cycle one, usually we have a little over 100 in Jenny Lynn that have to be looked at, about 40 in Copperopolis, and maybe a handful up in, West Point, Wilseyville area. Ebbets Pass normally has a little under, maybe about 60, 70 that they have to look at every time. But it also comes down to, when those reads come in, we are analyzing every read, auditing every read that comes in and sending those out. I don't think that, we'd have to sit down and we'd have to look at the time, it would take for staff, we both operationally, and I certainly don't want to speak for Damon and Pat. But I can tell you on our end, it would be impactful to admin services. But I'm also looking predominantly at the customer. Yes, the benefit is there to bill every month and have that be more under, maybe a educational or more understanding for them as far as what their monthly cost is. But then, they're going to be subject to, additional penalty.
Well,
potential
the
law
thing is
costs and all
that is their choice, not
Mhm.
ours. So, and maybe because they only get billed every other month, they feel they have longer, and then next thing you know, it's 2 months and they didn't make the payment.
Sure.
I don't want to say it's not our problem, because I want to make sure we do whatever we can to help the customers the best that we can. But at some point, and I'm almost ready to wrap this up, and it's been great conversation. But one of my questions to you, if it can be answered, it might be a little too early yet. But where has customer service, your department, been made more efficient since using Tyler and AMI?
For our department, oh.
Yeah, I don't know if
And
you
that's
have been,
hard-
quite
That's
frankly.
hard for me to answer right off the bat because I wasn't here before any of that was in place.
You've
So
been here a year or so. How long?
I've been here 3 years.
There you go.
But
See?
So in 3 years since you've been here, where have the changes to make your department more efficient? And I'm not saying it's a personnel thing. I still think it's this software. And, I believe we as a board thought everybody's going to be more efficient. And I don't see this has happened in customer service yet. And I hope it will, because I think it's more important for you folks.
right.
But, it's,
I don't,
go ahead.
Excuse
No.
I've seen her calls per day, calls per month and stuff. Those are going down and down and down. There's things are improving. I mean, there's evidence, stark evidence that things are improving, but I don't know. When I say a heat map, what Damon uses the heat maps where
Right.
where things occur frequently, and you put a ping on a map and it's a red dot, and pretty soon I think that the capability exists to identify some of these meters that are month after month are having difficulties, and let's diagnose why that is happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Fix it, so don't keep driving up to Arnold to check out half a dozen meters if there's some physical limitation.
Well, and that's where I feel like I certainly don't want to speak out of turn or overstep, but that is operational impact. That doesn't have any impact necessarily to admin services or me for billing. I mean, when it comes to billing, of
Oh, your
course, we know
exceptions, yeah.
if there's, things that need to happen at that point or meters that we need to get reads on, absolutely. But what I'm saying is like the ongoing effort to correct these things in the field and address them timely in the field. That is absolutely operational. And I work very closely with Damon and Pat on a regular basis with our AMI system. But certainly would not want to say, oh, this is something that they should be doing, 2 times a week. I don't know their workload, and that would be something that they would have to, address, that we'd have to collaborate on. But I believe our staff is doing that.
Well, you know what?
doing that now.
I should have asked that question a little differently. Where in the utility billing portion of this
Mhm.
has there been some efficiency, not the whole department and
Right.
everything?
Right.
So I take that back, and, and in the billing, it seems to me there's just, a lot more. Now, mind you, you guys recently just combined Tyler and Stop Springbrook, so I'm really being open, but I hope before I leave someday, you guys are going, yeah, this is the best thing we ever did. It's just taken a long time.
Well,
I should have rephrased that question.
I am looking forward to being able to hopefully provide some insight after we have this business process analysis with Tyler, to talk about what our next steps are to make the software more efficient, because I do know that has been a struggle
Yes,
on our end.
the billing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
the customer
Thank
service side.
you,
so.
Kelly, thank you. This has
Sure.
been really helpful and maybe if we could see what this is, the next, every other month, whatever works, in the schedule
Well,
would
I
be
have
kind
your-
of nice.
I have your notes and recommendations for how best to display this
Yeah.
for our next meeting. I'd like to do it monthly.
And if there's
so we
any
can-
way you could print it, that would be great.
Absolutely. This time around, I was running several different
Yeah.
reports. I will make sure you have
Okay.
it in the
Awesome.
packet.
Thank you.
moving
Do you have
forward.
any more questions for?
Well, yeah, I do. One other question. If you don't want to put a burden on them, since you have experience reading the meters, why don't you go up and?
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to
To
do
get
it.
out of the office, it's a fresh air. I'd love to. I love it every
That's a
time I went
great
out.
recommendation.
Didn't they
Russ.
give you one of those handhelds and?
I've got
Come-
one.
Oh, do you?
I could probably go out there and.
You
read
guys,
the
well,
meters.
let's
I wouldn't
move
mind
on.
doing
Do you
that.
know why?
Why?
Because the astronauts should be
Oh.
landing in another 10
You're-
minutes.
You're just.
And I want to see that. I know I could see it on YouTube.
Thank you
But
both very much.
thank you so much. I appreciate all the time you put into that. Okay, at this point.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Director of Admin Services comments. 2 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, ma'am. Just to give you an update on the budget, department budget requests are due this Friday. And starting on Thursday, Kelly, Stacy and I have a kickoff meeting to start figuring out what salary and benefit costs are going to be. They're going to do the bulk of the work. And so we're on a timeline to probably, I want to say early May to come to the finance committee or at least have a draft budget available at that.
I'm not going to be here at all in May.
At all in the entire month?
Well, based on when we do things, I leave May 12th and I know we have, a meeting scheduled for April 30th to help accommodate a couple of schedules to do we're going to move the regular meeting to April 30th. So if you can get a finance meeting before then, that would be great. Otherwise, I will call in.
Okay,
I can't participate, but I can certainly hear and make it a point to have it on this computer screen instead of my phone.
certainly.
So I leave the 12th and not be back till probably June 1st or 2nd,
Wow.
something like that. Got a wedding in Colorado and we're doing Montana and then we're coming back to
I will
reality.
make note of that. Just it. And that's all I have.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jeffrey. All right. There is no GM today. Director comments, future agenda items?
I just want a full report from Kelly.
You got one. She did a great one. That was some good information. I like when we all have the little dialogue like that. It makes it more of, we're all participating in something instead of just. Wah, wah. All right, is that it, young man?
I'm done.
All righty. And I just want to say thank you. I appreciate all the hard work and I know sometimes I ask for things and I appreciate you guys doing the best you can.
For sure.
And any of the next committee meeting is April 15th, tax day. And the meeting's adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you, Russ, for coming and showing up to